So we are back, and Peanut Gallery, let's start with the Money in the Bank winners.
Yeah, so there's an interesting thing that I kind of assume with the Money in the Bank winners this year, because, well, they were unexpected and they were expected at the same time. I think both Money in the Bank briefcases are going to be defended within the factions that they represent before the cash-in occurs. So with Damian Priest, for example, of course, as we saw at Money in the Bank, and I'm sure that we will talk about it in more detail, there was a little bit of beef going on with Finn Balor and Damian Priest.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't think about addressing this until just this afternoon, because, like, you're right, there is a faction war that is just primed to exist, because the leader of the factions, of the winners, were not in the Money in the Bank, and they did not win Money in the Bank.
Bayley was in Money in the Bank.
Well, she didn't win it, though.
Right.
So there's tension within these factions for I guess that leadership role,
right.
if you want to call it that, because obviously Damian Priest and Io Sky are kind of going off on their own little things. But let's talk about potential opponents, I guess. Let's talk about what would happen if Damian Priest cashed in. I think that Damian Priest will most likely cash in on Seth Rollins over someone like Roman Reigns. Unless Roman Reigns loses the title at some point, I don't see it happening. Let's put it that way.
Right. No, I here's the thing. I agree with you on that aspect. Because number one, he's on Raw, and number two, it's just primed for him. It's like they're grooming him for this placement.
Yes.
And it's like, well, how are you going to do this with Seth Rollins retaining yesterday?
Right.
And with the whole thing with Finn Balor, are Finn Balor and Damian Priest going to face off for the Money in the Bank contract?
I think that there might be potential for that at SummerSlam. But I don't. But that's kind of the first step, I think, on Damian Priest's journey towards that mega stardom.
Right.
And I think that he is probably going to wait until later this year or early next year to actually cash it in. So it might not even be on Seth Rollins by that point in time.
Maybe Finn Balor will get another opportunity and beat him for the title.
Exactly.
I'm looking at SummerSlam as like the perfect time for the cash in, because right now Damian Priest is white hot.
Right. But again, I don't see it happening before the Finn Balor rivalry happens. Now, there could be a swerve where Damian Priest does cash in and he wins, and then that is when he turns into like mega babyface and becomes this anti Finn Balor. So there's a lot of potential with that. I just don't see it happening.
I chose LA Knight to win the contract, but I definitely see more of a variety of what you can do. That was my phone. A variety of what you can do with Damian as the Money in the Bank contract.
Because really, with someone like LA Knight, there isn't like a clear path for him after winning the Money in the Bank. Like there wasn't something that's like, oh, this makes sense.
But he was extremely over. I mean, any person that had an interaction with LA Knight were pretty much booed out of the building.
Yeah.
He's very popular, and I think LA Knight has it to at least win the title once. Because remember, keep in mind, he's like in his late 30s, early 40s.
Right.
So time is not on his side. But he's in great shape, so maybe he'll be there for 20
But
years.
Again, there wasn't just something that...
Not at that time.
Right, that made sense for him.
Not yet, yeah.
Right.
LA Knight's not going anywhere anytime soon.
No.
Like, they're going to keep him on for a while.
Yeah.
So we need to be patient with LA Knight. Maybe cheer him more, showcase what they're missing here.
And let's talk about, the other potential in Roman Reigns. Now, again, I don't think that Roman Reigns is going to...
Roman's path is so far off of Judgment Day that I don't even think that they're going to sniff each other for a while.
But is there a potential for a future WWE champion to kind of... I don't see it happening, because I think that it's going to stick around with the bloodline for at least until the end of the year.
Yes.
I think it's going to be... I think Jey Uso is going to be the next person. He's going to be the person to dethrone Roman Reigns finally, because of probably betrayal by Solo, and he'll be the new head of the table. But I think that storyline is going to continue to exist.
Yes.
After
Damian cashing in on Roman just
or
does not
even
make
or
sense.
even Jey Uso. It doesn't make sense unless again, we're talking about factions. We're talking about leadership within those factions. Now, what if someone like Damian Priest pivots himself to the leader of the faction, but that really all rests on whether or not he keeps someone like Dominik and Rhea around.
Right.
Because a faction with leadership under Jey Uso would be a babyface team.
Yes.
In all technicality. Now, someone like Damian Priest betraying possibly like what Finn Balor did to Edge, becoming that major heel. So there is potential there for a faction rivalry to exist. But
it would be a lot. It would be a lot of ass pulls. I think it would just be harder to do that because even though that it would be like the babyface heel, and it would be good, you have to keep in mind that there are roster splits,
right?
And
I think that
those people are exclusive to those rosters, which is why the unlikely aspect of Damian Priest cashing in is that path. And I think the path right now is with Seth Rollins because Rollins is already feuding with a person within Judgment Day.
But again, there's that potential there for that to exist.
Well, yeah.
Now let's pivot over to the women's where I talked about Io Sky. Now again, Io Sky is facing the situation where she is. They're kind of teasing this split between Io Sky and
Bayley with damage control because Dakota Kai is hurt and she's going to be out for a while.
Yeah, so I think it's going to be a full disbandment of that whole situation.
Now, do you think that Bayley will try to wrestle Io for the contract?
Yes, I think that is a very real possibility.
Or do you believe that Bayley will win the title first and then?
Well, let's talk about that because obviously she's on SmackDown.
Both of them are on SmackDown. The champion right now is Asuka, who is right now heel.
Right.
Unless Charlotte beats Asuka.
Right.
Because right now Charlotte is a babyface.
Right.
But with Bianca Belair within that rivalry too, like I said, it's harder with the women's right now because they're not sniffing the main title that they would be going for right now. They're going to leave Rhea alone within the same situation.
Yeah, so it's going to be kind of like that Roman Reigns situation, right? Ripley's just going to be left alone. Now, the only way that they are going to be able to pivot over to Rhea is if one of them moves to Raw, which I think is a possibility given if there's like a faction split. There's a possibility that it's like a loser-leave SmackDown match or something like that, or whatever the case may be, because they tend to do that with rivalries that have freshly ended. They will move one of those faction members over to the other roster.
Right.
So there is entirely a possibility, however unlikely that it is, that Io Sky would move over to Raw. So
I think she would stay on SmackDown. I think Bayley would be the one.
Yeah, Bayley would be the one
to move to Raw because I think right now Raw definitely needs more star power within their women's roster, and I think Bayley would be a good addition to that because she can play both the babyface and the heel very well.
Yep.
But once again, the issue is that Rhea is full-fledged heel and she's way too popular.
Yes.
So it's not going to be on that end. It's going to be on the end of SmackDown. But how are you going to inject Io into that rivalry?
Well, again, I think at this point, they would probably do something very similar to kind of how Finn Balor and Damian Priest rivalry would transform. So then Io Sky would become a babyface, giving her the opening to face a heel Asuka, for example, which is fine because they've wrestled each other before.
Because it looks like what they're going to be doing, and this is where my prediction is as it relates to Io's cash-in, is that they're going to do a triple threat match at SummerSlam between Asuka, Charlotte, and Bianca for the title. That's just the natural progression of the rivalry.
Yeah.
Asuka wins, Io cashes in at SummerSlam. This one is going to be the shorter of the two cash-in opportunities just because I think there will be a much easier integration because Io isn't feuding with anybody other than Bayley right now. So she can be injected into that spot a lot easier than Damian
and they don't even have to be full-fledged feuding. It could be similar to the situation with Bayley and Sasha Banks.
That's the great thing about Money in the Bank is that it can go to anybody. Hell, we see Io Sky going to NXT and cashing in for the NXT.
I don't think
doubt that.
NXT is a non-starter with either of these. But anyways, it was fun to speculate. So that's kind of what I want to talk about.
It's how to do it and how to do it right. With Io, I think Asuka is the clear path. With the undisputed or the women's champion.
Yeah.
On the other side, obviously, Priest is in the collapsation of Judgment Day as a whole, and Finn is already in a rivalry with Seth Rollins. Right. With that one, I think they're going to do another match, and then Damian will cash in, but they're going to drag that one out longer than Io.
So the verdict is likely it's going to be Seth. And it's going to be Asuka or whoever is in that lineage for that title. And the women's is going to be cashed in before the men's.
Yep, I think so too. So when we come back, I'm going to get on my soapbox because kind of a boring show or kind of a boring week. So join us then.